Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Monday. All right. Yeah, sure. Fine, everybody. It's Monday, June 5th, 2023. I mean, that was correct. I don't know what stopped me there. Except that, I don't know, everything isn't quite right in front of me today. And, we're dealing with the reality of the end of the school era. But really, we should be, by this point, ready to jump into the usual summer schedule, which is not that difficult to deal with. But everything's a little bit out of place today. I'm not, of course, waking anybody up to make the bus or get their lunches together, all that sort of thing. We've been expecting that for a while. But also, the production staff, who are often around on Mondays and Fridays, still working from home these days, and I'm glad for that, are elsewhere, traveling today. So it's sort of an empty place, and it's as close to empty nest as we get here, anyway, on in KITM World Headquarters. That was something that could have been happening at some point earlier on, but College Boy is back and working on things, and the next college matriculant has not left yet, so it's not really empty. It just feels empty because everyone who could otherwise be occupying space around here is fast asleep. We're not on that early in the morning either. We're on like at the beginning of the business day. So anyway, it would be nice, right, to sleep through. Not happening here for us, though, because we're on the air for you. Okay. And so at any rate, just getting everything together today. It's been a busy weekend. Nothing much in terms of, no further drama on the debt ceiling crisis because that was settled prior to the weekend. So it remained relatively quiet, which meant I could focus on important things like fixing the dryer. I'm very happy, very proud of myself for having fixed our dryer, which stopped heating the other day, and I was told it was a relatively simple fix. And as it turns out, it was one of the more complex of the simple fixes, but had to replace the dryer heating element. Yes, and I tested all the fuses and thermostats and everything, and it turned out that there was, in fact, a crack in the heating element, and replaced it. And it's not a difficult repair by any means, but it's the sort of thing that you usually say, I don't know how to do that. And you call the repair guy, and he says, I'll come next Wednesday, and you can't do any laundry until then. And then he shows up, and he says, well, it's $100 for the service call, $150 for parts, and ends up being a $350 repair. And as it turns out, it's just as you always suspected. One, the repair is fairly simple. Two, you can buy the parts for about $30, and it's not $300 worth of anything. I mean, I guess you could say it was $300 worth of my time, I guess. I mean, it would have taken a professional. Holy cow, I forgot about how high the volume was on that. Okay, let me turn that down. But Greg Dworkin is here, and I have left. I knew that this was going to happen, too. When I did it, I knew it was happening. I turned up the volume on Friday to play a YouTube clip or something like that, which runs through the same, maybe I should fix that one of these days. It runs through the same volume box as Skype. So, of course, that was sitting up at 200% volume. So it very loudly announced the presence of Greg Dworkin, who's here now, a lot less loud than the bells and chimes that announced his entrance. Good morning, Greg. How you doing?
Good morning. Let's just turn it up to 11 and leave it there.
Yeah. Right. I feel like, we all ought to do that. Anyway, oh, yes, right. I forgot to tell everybody. So the repair of the dryer, very simple. You snap things into place and screw the thing back on, and it actually works, and pretty good. But I suppose calling somebody else away from their family or other people who had harder emergencies to fix and making them come in here and buy the parts and fix it, that's how you get to $300 on a repair. Nobody seems to be making out like a bandit on it necessarily. It's just, but you could do it by yourself. And all you have to do is remember to wear gloves because the sheet metal inside one of those dryers is very sharp. You're not really supposed to be handling it without gloves on. And that's my advice to all of you. If you need to fix your dryer. Also, clean those lint traps and clean out the vents. That was another major event of the weekend, cleaning out the dryer vent all the way to the outside. What an exciting development that was. And also, production staff gets big ups on inventing a great way of cleaning them out. I had gone out and bought one of these extendable brushes that you feed down there with this long thing, like 30 feet. But a better option was to take the louvers off of the vent outside, bring the leaf blower inside. We have an electric one, thankfully, not the disgusting gas one. We wouldn't have done that. And just disconnect the vent from the dryer, put the leaf blower in it, and turn it on. And it blows stuff out like you wouldn't believe. So, as it turns out, it does a lot better job than the brush. It makes your yard a bit of a mess afterwards. But then you have a leaf blower, so you can clean it up pretty easily afterwards, too. So that's our appliance maintenance with the wrong kinds of appliances minute for today. All right, Greg. What's happening politically?
In Newtown, we have a lot of retired and active pilots who live here for whatever reason. It happens to be a very popular place for pilots to live.
Okay.
So, we just borrow one of our neighbor's jet engines and put it in the inside and blow it right through the leaf blower.
Yeah, that's
that cleans out all the lint pretty good, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it worked really well. I must say.
Also moves the house about 500 yards, but that's
This was, I thought, a great idea, just in terms of innovation.
I mean, what could go wrong?
Yeah, I don't know. This was pretty fun and easy, but I'm a little wiped out from carrying the wrong tools all over the house. But it was fun applying the wrong tool to the wrong job and still getting good results.
Well, the usual problem with calling the repairman, isn't so much the money. It takes a while to schedule them. Then they come in and then they take the thing apart. Then they look at it and then they say, there's a part here that's broken. We'll order it. And again, it's not the money, and that'll take 3 weeks.
That's true.
That's the part that really is the most annoying. Took, a week to get the guy and then 3 weeks to get the part. And in the case of our dryer, we had a cracked bin, the thing that you put the clothes in.
The drum.
The drum. And it's plastic.
Oh.
But it was cracked. And, it took sending for another, because they don't have those on the truck. So then we got another one. That was cracked. And then we got another one, and that was cracked. And then we finally got a complete, a credit for the dryer so that we could go get another one because they couldn't get us uncracked drums.
Oh, that's weird. I don't think
So we got a new dryer and on them, and actually it worked beautifully.
Well, that's good.
And that's not a repair you can do.
We occasionally hear it chiming at us. Is that maybe it is?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was discussing the various noises which are missing from my end of the broadcast today because everybody's either asleep or in Salt Lake City.
Abby's currently eating a bone, and so she's kind of happy and not barking at the street, but you never know.
Right, the trucks.
So let me start out.
Yeah, let's do news.
Well, yeah, you were right. It's sort of a slow summer weekend. So it turns out that Monday shows don't have nearly as much news as middle of the week.
So we can talk about appliance repair.
Well, you'll be happy I could find something to talk about process.
All right.
The big stories, I think, are what's going on in Ukraine, which we don't know yet because the Ukrainian offensive might be starting.
Well, that's offensive. Okay.
And the other thing is, of course, the number of people jumping into the presidential race. So I have a cartoon for you there.
We don't care about those guys. All right.
You have to picture Mike Pence standing at the podium, Pence 24, and his hands are on the podium. As we were taught, don't do things with your hands when you're talking to people in our media training.
Yes.
But next to Mike Pence is that scaffold with the noose hanging on it that was so prominent on January 6th, right next to him. Mike Pence is ignoring it and looking right at the audience and saying, I've decided to throw my neck in the ring.
Your neck in the what?
And that,
Right.
sums up Mike Pence running for president.
Wow.
Who wants him? Who cares? Oh, and by the way, Chuck Todd is retiring, or at least he's
Yes.
the press is going to be just the chief political correspondent, which he's been all along. Kind of had a dual role.
Yeah, I was not sure why he was retiring.
Lots of nice things have been said about Chuck Todd, but not by anybody we know. And one of the things that Kevin Cross,
nice guy,
tweeted, he's a nice guy, and he said, I'd asked Chuck, what this means, but of course he doesn't do follow-up questions.
Yeah, right. That's true.
It's replaced by Kristen Welker. I don't have a tremendous number of good things to say about Kristen Welker. She was the one that followed Hillary Clinton around and everything that happened. There was a cloud cast by this, that, and everything else.
All right,
but
well, I'll say that then.
In Chuck Todd's defense, I'll say two things.
Mm-hmm.
One, the Chris Licht type people who manage him,
yes,
gave them the show they asked for.
Okay.
That's not him. That's them. They wanted this show. They wanted no tough follow-ups. They wanted not to confront Republicans. So we gave them what they wanted.
All right.
And I don't know how good that is.
It is not good.
The other thing is, and this is an observation I saw by David Rothkopf, so I don't want to steal his limelight or take credit for what he said, but I think he's absolutely right.
All right.
He said that in the modern era of 24-hour cable plus social media, shows like Meet the Press are a complete anachronism. By the time it gets to Sunday, whoever it is on the show has already said it 5 times in 8 different places.
That is true.
And so if you don't have follow-up questions, who needs it? I mean, who needs the show? It's a complete and total waste of time. There's nothing you're going to learn on that you haven't already known.
Yeah. It's been true for a while.
Produce the NBC poll. Fine.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you can produce that elsewhere.
Thing.
Yeah. That's true. I mean, honestly, that's it's been true for a while, and I guess it was just, I don't know, a place for old school folks to sort of touch base and reset and catch up on things from the weekend. But there are so few. The old school folks are pretty adept at picking up the news along the way from other sources. Many of them actually pretty hooked into social media. Or, you know what? It was interesting. Now that it occurs to me, I mean, for the serious political professionals, that was the role filled back in the day by the hotline, which is actually where Chuck Todd came from. And he should have known, I think, by the time he took the job, that the whole thing was outdated. But I guess he probably took it saying, I don't know, they're going to give me like millions of dollars, so I guess I'll do it. Right. So I can't blame him for that.
No, and and the fact that the show's going to suck into Kristen Welker isn't necessarily her fault either, because the format. The problem is the show's existence. I mean, what it is and what it does, you don't need. So how can anybody succeed?
That's true. I mean, and the only thing, well, it's interesting too. They say, well, the only thing we can do that we'll make news, but they were making news. The news they were making was, hey, guess what? Somebody isn't following up with good questions. That's the news now. Because like you said, there's certainly nothing breaks on there. Nobody says anything new or exciting, and you don't have to wait for Sunday. And it would be foolish to do so anyway with your best lines, because there's a bigger audience throughout the week on social media. Oh, well, buggy whip of American politics, I guess.
Yeah, one of our commenters on Daily Kos reminds us that, in terms of Chuck Todd just not being that good at his job, days after the 2018 election, right?
Okay.
He still didn't see evidence of a blue wave. There was a blue wave in 2018.
Yeah, what kind of
evidence? And days later, he
didn't
didn't see it. That's what he said on the show.
I mean, does he?
That's the quote. I don't see evidence of a blue wave yet.
Well, he doesn't see color.
Gratuitously wrong.
Maybe that's
and so, it just amplifies the regular media that, hey, there's nothing wrong with the Republicans. They're mainstream. And of course, nobody wants Democrats.
I guess not. I mean, what's the evidence that you're looking for? You look at the number of people in Congress, and that's a number.
Well,
and
it's one of those
who's got
things
the
that
majority.
the results took a while to come in. And so until I see it, and it's a week later and everybody else has said it too, I don't see it.
Oh, well, maybe it's the wave. I don't see the wave. Okay, here comes the evidence of the wave. Okay, it's been a long time. The wave is old news. I guess you could take it at that. Yeah, I suppose that would be a little more truthful. But okay, well, he could say he doesn't see the wave. My eyes are closed. I don't see any wave. You're right. You don't. I mean, there was a wave. You're wrong about that part. But all right.
So over the weekend, we had even more on the whole thing about Chris Licht and how he runs CNN.
Yes, that's right. Something happened with him.
Well,
there was a thing.
A couple of things. I mean, Tim Alberta had a really, really deep dive into Chris Licht because he had gotten unfettered access for a year, one of those things that people do, and then afterwards they say, oh, my God, why did I do that?
Yes. Pretty regularly. All right.
Pretty regularly. But, when you have an incredible ego, you have to figure that if they spend that much time with me, they're going to love me like everybody else does, like I do.
I guess so. I mean,
it's all going to come out great.
He does. His days are filled with people, disingenuously telling him he's a genius and his ideas are great because he controls all their paychecks, and he figures everyone else will feel the same way. I feel great about myself. I hired people to tell myself I was great, and they will hear it, and they'll write a book about how great I am.
Right. So there's a couple of things to highlight about that.
Serious problem. Yes.
Because when I say Chuck Tato's Chris Lichty type bosses, here's the Tim Alberta piece. Inside the meltdown at CNN, CEO Chris Licht felt he was on a mission to restore the network's reputation for serious journalism. How did it all go wrong? Acknowledging the fact that it all went wrong.
Good. That's nice. Tim Alberta VO5.
So, it's like an 8,000-word article, but that's okay. They cover it in a couple of different aspects, how he got the job, how he didn't really have a lot of respect for his previous incarnation, Zucker. How he didn't really listen to any of the people at CNN who knew what they were doing, like the reporters.
Man, I could do this job.
And then, they concentrated a lot about the town hall.
Well, yes. Huge recent mistake. Yes.
Right. And, it's
good.
For 70 minutes in Manchester, the former president overpowered CNN's moderator, Caitlin Collins, with a continuous blast of distortion, hyperbole, and lies. The audience of Trump devotees delighted in his aggression toward Collins, cheering him on so loudly and so purposefully that what began as a journalistic forum devolved into a WWE match before the first voter asked the question. Of course, those of you who were listening to this show a couple of weeks ago would understand this. It's all kayfabe. Vince McMahon himself could not have written a juicier script. Trump was the heroic brawler trying to reclaim a title wrongly taken from him. While Collins, standing in for the villainous elites who dared to question the protagonist's virtue, was cast as the heel. She's not very nice, Trump told the studio audience, pointing toward Collins while she stood off stage during the first commercial break.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
accurate
wrestling,
description.
absolutely.
Good job there, Greg.
Right.
I mean, everywhere, but that too. I don't mean to say that it's crap elsewhere. I'm just saying this was particularly poignant.
So, here's Tim Alberta, who attended that. Right. And this was the part that I picked out for the pundit round on Saturday because I thought it was just so appropriate. As I'd settled into my seat in the St. Anselm Auditorium, however, I had been startled by my surroundings. This was no ordinary collection of Republicans and GOP-leaning independents, as CNN had claimed it would be. Most of them were diehards, fanboys, political zealots who were likelier to show up at a rally with a MAGA flag than come to a coffee shop with a policy question. These folks hadn't turned out to participate in some good faith civic ritual. They were there to celebrate Trump's continued assault on the media.
Yeah.
The point is, CNN set this up.
Yes.
This is what Licht wanted. The reason those folks were there is he agreed to it. And there was one part where Trump was speaking, and on the teleprompter or the chyron, sexual abuse came up, and Licht demanded that CNN take it down. And the people at CNN were furious. My point here is Licht is going out of his way to present himself as a moderate middle guy who just thinks that Republicans don't get enough press, and it's our job to tell everybody about them because that's how you make sure everybody in the United States is covered. And in fact, he is a ego-driven, wrong-headed executive who thinks he knows everything. Sounds like Elon Musk, who gets everything wrong. He thinks that conservatives somehow have never been mentioned in media since 2016, or that Trumpers haven't.
That seems
that
odd.
Trump doesn't get enough coverage.
The diner coverage alone is
It's ridiculous.
all right. Yeah.
Of course we know who they are. And he set it up so that they get more prominent, and he thought it was a good idea. That's my emphasis here. He thought that was a good idea. It's not journalism. It's not entertaining. In 2023, it's not necessary. He thought it was a good idea. That's what's wrong with him. He has terrible judgment, and he thinks he's really smart.
Yeah.
And that's why CNN sucks.
I guess that must be the reason. It's never been more. Well, I guess I should say we've never had more, I think, simultaneous great examples, crystalline examples of executives who have risen to enormous power, prominence, and wealth, who have no idea what they're doing, but substitute the wealth for, an insistence that they do know what they're doing. Look, I couldn't possibly be this wealthy unless I did. And, turns out it's not the case, to say the very least. But boy, it's just been an amazing run for punching holes in that theory, but it's so ingrained in everything we do. It's going to take a couple hundred years to undo this.
For those who don't know or don't remember, Chris Licht's claim to fame was being Joe Scarborough's producer.
I don't think I even knew.
And the fact that Scarborough was elevated and then is doing well on MSNBC is supposed to be evidence of how brilliant Chris Licht was. And that's how he was going to come and just fix everything over at CNN.
I mean, all right. Well, that's again, very traditional mindset. The executives at CNN probably say, he's doing good over at this other thing. Let's hire
over there. Let's
hire
him and have him over here. Yeah. But I don't think that he figured, what is it that makes Scarborough popular? Scarborough's willing to buck the Republican Party like almost every day. He's not Nicole Wallace, who has nothing good to say about the Republican Party. He's Nicole Wallace looks at the Republican Party and is incredulous that they're this bad.
Yes.
And Scarborough looks at the Republican Party and looks at it and says, in sorrow and anger, I told them how to do it right. They didn't listen to me. They're doing it wrong. Here's my guest to explain them. It's actually because his guests are good and because he lets them talk, unlike Chris Matthews. It's kind of interesting to watch depending upon who his guests are.
Okay.
Right? But the idea that Licht brought over to CNN that everybody has an agenda and it's our job to just tell the truth is based, in fact, in his head that center-right truth is actually what we're trying to get the country to see and understand, because that's the truth, the only truth. And any criticism of the Republican Party, and especially Republicans as radicals, is wrong, and we have to stamp that out. And that's the patina he's trying to put on CNN, and it's not working because it's simply not true.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's only so much you can do if you've got the wrong idea about what the composition of the American viewership, electorate, I guess for him it's viewership, actually is. And, I mean, he could easily see somebody he believes in could certainly have had a conversation with him and said, to get to, it's not a bad thing to want to get to center right as the orientation of your channel. The problem is that you're dealing with players that, they're not center anything. I mean, at least on the right, certainly it's, you should be tamping down on if you really want to end up center right, you need to beat up on these guys.
Right. Now Licht had a sort of
for him center is beat up on everybody.
That, the thing he didn't like most about what had happened to CNN under Jeff Zucker is that the reporters had been baited to be part of the story. That just because you hate the guy, you shouldn't be part of the story. You can't be Rachel Maddow all the time, because nobody's as smart as Maddow, and you don't do it as well as her. He didn't get that far. But, you shouldn't be Rachel Maddow all the time, only bashing Republicans. That's what MSNBC does. We don't want to do that. But rather than get to the core of what's going on, why don't you just do journalism and expose what's going on with the radicals? It was more like they do it, so we shouldn't, and our reporters shouldn't be part of the story. And so every time they criticize Trump, they're making themselves part of the story, so we won't let them criticize Trump. It's just a really simplistic, if you will, Chuck Todd way of approaching the problem that doesn't get to the heart of the issue and ruins what it is you're trying to do, because it's not journalism. You're not afflicting the comfortable. You're not comforting the afflicted. You're not telling the truth. And Christine Amanpour had it right with her criticism a couple of weeks ago when she said both sidesism doesn't work when one side is different than the other.
That's a basic truth. Certainly, we've been saying it for 100 years, not because we made it up, but because everyone else is saying it.
Right. So
Christine Amanpour too
clearly throughout this article doesn't get it, and then by the end of the article, it's pretty clear he doesn't get it. And then it turns out right after the article was published, he was removed from his CEO position, and somebody else was brought in from the big company, Warner Discovery, to replace that. And he's now only going to be responsible for programming, not the business end of things. Which is to say, your ratings suck. You got one last chance to get things straight.
Okay. Yeah, well,
and we're giving you a minder. We're putting somebody who ostensibly reports to you who's going to tell you what to do.
A political officer in the Soviet Union. Okay.
Exactly right.
Very nice. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We continue with our weekend catch-up session, our roundup. Greg Dworkin making his way through these stories. All right, I have some reading to do on the CNN Chris Licht thing. I'd like to catch up with the details. I just jumped on the bandwagon as soon as we saw about the town hall. Well, I don't know who's responsible for that because I haven't paid attention to who's in charge of CNN, but this sucks. His name's Chris Licht. Got it.
There's the town hall that sort of highlights why it's important.
Yes.
There's the general aspect of why Trump was on altogether.
Okay.
And it's not so much Chris Licht as a personality. He's not really all that interesting. It's what he represents. And Thomas Zimmer, who is more accessible, he's on Substack rather than Atlantic, which is paywalled. Had a couple of articles about the CNN stuff, but then he had a third one that he came out with that I thought was really interesting on June 4th. He said, the status quo fundamentalism of the moderate arbiters of reason.
Whoa. All right.
This gets back to the Chuck Todds and Chris Lichts and their view of the world. CNN's boss displays a deeply ideological belief in his own superior objectivity that is pervasive among America's elite and makes him a willing henchman of a reactionary political project. Again, Elon Musk is like that. He's so convinced that he's so much smarter than everybody else when it comes to politics and understanding where real America is.
Yes.
And all these guys are. The My Pillow guy, all of these guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
They all think they're smarter than everybody else, and only they really get it.
Yes. That happens everywhere. What did I see this? I can't remember why I saw it. And it was, a routine thing, but I saw somebody talking about just Donald Trump and his ego, which has obviously been a major story for a long time, and just the part where they said he was asked, I guess in 2016, who do you rely on for advice on foreign policy? Routine question for a presidential candidate, and his actual answer was myself.
Yes.
And between
Nobody
that
knows it
and
better than I
Elon
do.
Musk, and even now Jack Dorsey, who started his own, new social media thing, supposedly.
Blue Sky.
Yeah. And,
You can't get on because it's still on beta.
oh, well, don't worry about it. You're not missing out, because apparently everybody is now abandoning that because he has gone, and if I understood the implications correctly,
endorsing RFK.
Yes. RFK Jr. for president on his anti-vax platform. And
He's brilliant and he's going to win, said Dorsey.
see? Okay. Now, this is one of those guys that just lives in his own bubble where I tell you, we mentioned this is a recurring theme on the show. I would be a morning person and a go-getter and a, CEO star performer if my day from start to finish was about everybody affirming every stupid thing I said, and people were jumping to implement whatever, I spat out as a great idea. This strikes me as an interesting idea. Go execute this. My days would be great. I'd get up early too.
Yes, and that's exactly what MAGA wants. 1950s, dad is the ruler of the house and everybody else is supposed to jump and do that. And that's why that whole mythos is so popular for them. Anyway, this is Thomas Zimmer. On Friday, The Atlantic published a massive profile of Chris Licht, the man who took over as the CEO of CNN about a year ago, written by Tim Alberta. The author tries really hard to be fair, and Alberta's not particularly unsympathetic.
Okay.
And the challenges Licht faced at CNN.
He's
and
a
yet
journalist.
the profile amounts to a devastating indictment of Licht and of a worldview that's widely held among those who dominate the civic institutions of American life. I've already written 2 long pieces on how justifications for CNN's disastrous Trump town hall, and it's interesting. Everybody understands it was a disaster, even Licht, reveal the deeper pathologies and fallacies that have characterized the Trump discourse since 2016. The Atlantic profile provides plenty more evidence of how much Licht's political diagnosis is shaped by myths of liberal echo chambers, the idea that Trump speaks for an authentic America that's rightfully aggrieved, and how much he wants all of us to buy into those chimeras. It's worth digging into Licht's case one more time, because what stands out from this profile is the combination of naivety and arrogance, all coming on top of an ideological status quo fundamentalism that stands in marked contrast to Licht's self-perception as a reasonable actor untarnished by the irrationality that supposedly plagues everybody else who disagrees with him. Now, I've told you that a lot of times, David.
Yes.
The middle, I'm neither right nor left. I'm exactly in the middle. And everybody who disagrees with me is either to the left or to the right of me.
Obviously, a lunatic, yes. It struck me
I don't
as
understand why the rest of the world doesn't get this.
As you read Zimmer's description of Alberta's work, it struck me that he was basically saying, now Alberta is adopting the role of the journalist as, I guess, properly defined, and through his ability to view things objectively, comes to the conclusion that Licht is actually wrong about things, and then says so, and
Alberta,
that violates Licht's version of the definition of journalism.
Alberta's a journalist and Licht isn't. Yeah. Alberta is a right-leaning, always has been, conservative side that is a never-Trumper that understands that, radicalism goes too far, but whose gut feeling
goes too far,
sort of leans conservative.
All right. I mean,
real good friends with Ron Fournier. It's just Matthew Dowd's style of this is where the country should be. Dowd's to the left of both of those other guys. But they're basically what we used to call the center right. And that's where he's coming from.
Yes. And when I say out loud, when you mentioned Ron Fournier, I mean, just as an example, to me, like a great illustration of how they sometimes do adopt that, that stance, right? And now, I'm an ever-Trumper, and everybody should be congregating with me in the center here. Ron Fournier, like from the early days, I've blocked me on Twitter, like, oh, he's saying radical, crazy thing. I was the crazy weirdo radical who was, oh my God, he's out of his mind. He's one of those weirdo leftists. I can't even have him in my feed. And not that I cared because I didn't listen to him.
With the preposition that the left is wrong. That's a given. You don't even have to discuss that.
So
the thing is, the Republicans have gone so far right that we can't yada, yada, yada. And that's where they're coming from. There's an audience for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. What's interesting is that they lecture us about, well, this is the proper role of a journalist and da-da-da. Yeah, the proper role of a journalist is blocking people on Twitter because they,
point out that you're not being objective. I mean,
I'm not
that's
even
really
pointing out about him.
That is what Zimmer's writing about.
Yeah.
The whole way that they're coming at this is from a biased view that they themselves consider objective and everybody else doesn't get. That's what's so interesting.
That is amazing. And then, of course, to then proceed to the conclusion of, in the interest of fairness and balance, we have to do things like host a Donald Trump town hall. But, in the meantime, it would be wise to block people like me because, block them. But in the interest of being open and an honest journalist, we have to be able to host town halls with fascists.
Right. There's only 3 Democrats in the
people.
country, even though they keep winning the popular election. But we don't have to keep treating them seriously.
Yeah, where's the wave?
Let's get all our information from Republicans like the gossip sheets do. So Zimmer writes, Chris Licht has it all figured out, or so he believes. The profile opens with Licht telling us he doesn't spend much time thinking about how the media should adequately cover Donald Trump because it's simple. Okay. Simplistic is a better word. You cover him like any other candidate. Again, what I want to emphasize about Chris Licht is that he is so wrong about everything. And he's in charge, and he thinks he's smart. Now, here's another example. He was wrong about the town hall. He's wrong about this. You don't cover him like any other candidate. He's indicted. He caused a riot. He's an insurrectionist. He's a crook. He's a con man. How can you cover him like any other candidate? How can you even come to that conclusion if you're an objective journalist?
Yeah. No, I don't think I could come to that conclusion, except that they're in the business of, or whatever it is that's driving them, business or just personal bias or blindness, that they are in the normalization business. For some people, they can't normalize Vermin Supreme. They wouldn't normalize David Duke, but David Duke was never indicted. Yeah. But they were sure that he should not be covered as a mainstream candidate.
The rent's too high.
Oh, yeah, right. That guy, too. Yeah. Then he was just covered as a novelty because, I don't know, he had a nice line. It sometimes happens with a breakout catchphrase.
Well, the rent is too high.
It is. He was right. Plus, he had a wacky mustache, as I recall.
Yeah. To be fair, these statements were made before the Trump town hall proved yet again how foolish such an approach is, but Licht is unlikely to learn the appropriate lessons from the debacle for which he is chiefly responsible. In Licht, we encounter a particular kind of arrogance. He seems obsessed with the truth. There's only one truth, he says. And CNN will have no agenda other than the truth. It'll be a source of absolute truth. These are quotes. Sober, fact-driven coverage, unaffected by ideology and subjective belief. Unfortunately, this kind of willfully naive performative neutrality is very characteristic of a media system that incentivizes constant demonstrations of nonpartisanship. Now, we'd be in a better place if people in positions of influence and power were to let go of such simplistic notions. At some point, Alberta asked Licht if he's a conservative. It's like asking Elon Musk if he's a conservative. New York Times did that.
Okay.
Licht's answer is revealing. I would never put myself into a category. He has no problem putting his critics into categories.
Yeah, yes. Well, that's
accusing them of being incapable of acting as anything but members of their tribe, but not him.
Yeah, all right. That feels familiar.
Yes, it does. Sunday mornings on Meet the Press. The political discourse is significantly shaped by a whole industry of people, most of them white men, who believe themselves to be beyond ideology, whose self-perception and claim to relevance is built around the idea they're arbiters of pure reason. We find them as prominent members of the pundit class, objective data journalism gurus, media executives with an outsized influence on the public conversation. These arbiters of reason, in capital letters, which could be scare quotes, operate from the conviction that they're capable of superior judgment across a wide variety of fields. You know, the latter version of Nate Silver.
Yes.
You know, I'm good at what I do, so let me pontificate about the pandemic.
Okay.
They owe much of their prominent status to the idea that they're unbiased, dispassionate truth tellers, all about data and facts, brave enough to give us the unvarnished truth in a heroic effort against conventional wisdom and the dark forces of subjectivity. They feel capable and entitled to offer a firm assessment of anything, yet all too often just end up judging the world by whether or not it's in line with their own sensibilities. Now, Licht rephrases that as he's just asking the tough questions, just doing the research. Does that sound familiar?
Oh, yes.
Want to put it in context?
All right. Well, that's that's a familiar one.
Yep. It's a recurring theme in how the centrist white male elites describe the world, an obsession with pointing out the supposed fallacies of left-wing activism or advocacy. Again, the difference between an activist and an advocate works from within the system. So people at CNN who say that Trump is terrible are advocates. People outside CNN who say CNN sucks for saying Trump, you know, is okay are activists.
Yeah.
That's the difference, in case you want to know.
I feel like I have seen that play run before.
Right? So advocacy and activism, these are terms Licht seems to use a lot. Their entire mystique is built on offering better judgment than those biased activists. And that's what puts them on a rightward trajectory.
That is
weird. Because,
weird.
you know, truth has a liberal bias and you can't stand it.
I guess. Yeah, here, interesting addition to the mix about Chris Licht. Ricky from our pal in PEI, Ricky the Canuckistani, tells us.
Hi, Ricky.
Yeah, first and only time that I ever heard of Chris Licht was when he was the showrunner on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. Was that right? I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
After the Trump, I didn't know anything about Chris Licht, but after the Trump town hall, I was kind of shocked that he would be behind such a thing after being on a show that, though it's comedic, is quite liberal for the most part. That does seem like an incongruous matchup. I don't know.
Well, he was just doing it for a living. You know,
Yeah.
it's a job, man.
It could be either that, or it could be, I suppose, that you get a new serious and important job, and so you put on your serious important suit, and everyone knows that
comedy.
serious
we're
important
putting on our
is
big boy pants, and we're going to do serious,
right, and
serious money, serious viewing,
and that's conservative.
and that's conservative.
So okay,
Serious. Please,
Could be
the boss
anything.
who just bought the station and says we have to go. You know, Fox News, and a lot of the Tim Alberta article is about how CNN perceives Licht, the actual journalist there, perceives Licht as somebody who just is sucking up to the boss.
I guess that's it. Oh, maybe that's what he was doing for Stephen Colbert. You want to be liberal and funny? We'll do that. So
that explains the the contradiction there.
I guess it's interesting that I don't know what his background is prior to that. I mean, I guess, did he come up in journalism or what was supposed to be journalism? And did Colbert say, we should have a journalist because we're such serious, we have a focus on the news, we're comedy, but you want a journalist for their insight in this? And I don't know.
So Zimmer finishes by saying, and again, Zimmer is leftist critique. It might be impossible to discern the exact extent to which somebody like Licht realizes how much he's furthering the interests of the corporate overlords who tower over him, and how much his actions are in line with the interests of traditional elites more broadly. To be fair, from an elite perspective, this kind of status quo fundamentalism is rational, and it makes sense to regard the left as a bigger immediate status threat. It's true. I mean, the left wants to tax you guys.
Yeah.
Right?
I guess.
And the left wants you to change what you're doing.
And they're making a lot of money and buying vacation homes. So
it is true that an agenda seeking to move America from being a restricted white man's democracy that left existing hierarchies largely intact to a functioning multiracial pluralistic social democracy is a losing proposition for people who've traditionally been at the top. And for many of the status quo moderates, this change has already gone too far. They want to turn the clock back. So it was before wokeism. So while I don't think Chris Licht is a MAGA Republican, his perspective on American politics is shaped by an underlying ideology that makes it just much more plausible to see the right as not that big of a threat and the left as radical, unreasonable, and acutely dangerous, which is how he treated you when you tried to interact with him on Twitter.
Pretty much. Okay. Well, it's a familiar
So
ideology.
this whole first segment of the show is to explain to you how come Chris Licht was mean to you on Twitter.
It wasn't. It was Ron Fournier, but Chris Licht I never encountered. But yes, as you mentioned,
Licht, Ron Fournier,
thing.
Chuck Todd, they're all interchangeable.
Yeah, I guess so. In the end, all right. Well,
that was Zimmer's point. They have a point of view.
Yes.
They think it's unique. In fact, it's pretty easy to categorize.
Yes,
we don't fall in any category. Well, this is the category you, in fact, do fall into.
Right, the I don't see color category. I know you
exactly.
Okay, and it's new and cutting edge. Just like there was a whole sitcom about it in the 1970s called All in the Family. But okay, it's a great ideology.
Yeah, exactly right.
And by the way, that was the point of the show at the time. In case you missed the point of the show, not you didn't miss it, but was that even by that time, that point of view was stodgy and outdated. But
yes.
50 years on, well, like everything else, right? I have artisan milk delivered to my house
next door. Right. The whole point is so that Archie Bunker could say to them, "What do you mean, you people? You people or you people?"
Yeah. It was a well-known blueprint for, behavioral, misbehavior, even then. But yeah, like I say, I was hinting at the 50 years on. Everybody thinks everything old is new again, right? People who are having milk delivered to their house because they order it on an app and think this is a new innovation.
Or seltzer.
Yes, right. That's true too. Or they get SodaStream, and they're like, that's fantastic and new and interesting. And I'm like, my grandparents used to have either the seltzer or they would get the little gas canisters and make their own seltzer. That's right. SodaStream, and it's 80 years old.
Right, exactly.
All right. Well, anyway. So don't fall into that trap. But if you do, make sure they give you millions of dollars to do it.
Right. So I promised you I'd talk a little bit about process.
That's right. You did, and I almost forgot
Here
to
it is.
To it. Yeah.
Remember that, and we'll talk perhaps for the rest of the show about this. Biden did pretty well in this whole negotiation.
Yeah, all right.
But Jamie Dupre points out, look, now that Congress has agreed on spending limits, it's time for lawmakers to forge the 2024 funding bills. These are the appropriations, right?
Right.
But there isn't much time. The House has only 24 workdays between now and Labor Day.
All right.
That's not a lot of time to do this stuff.
No. Labor Day isn't their last chance, but
people thought that Kevin McCarthy couldn't run the House. And the bar was so low that passing any bill, no matter how bad, was evidence of his political genius.
Well, it's the extent of his political genius.
My point is, now the hard work starts. You got to get these 12, 13, I forget how many appropriations bills lined up before Labor Day. Let's see how you do.
Yes. Of course, remember that the alternative to actually doing the work is to throw your hands up in frustration and do a continuing resolution instead. And
right.
Very often will
and happen. So that's likely, but, that's the bar really you should judge McCarthy by.
Yes, and we also should remind people inside the Republican conference that you too can judge McCarthy by this. You wanted so badly to be able to replace him, and also you wanted so badly to be able to say that you were going to bring regular order back to the process. You don't. That's how much time you have to pass 12 appropriations bills separately. But if you don't. One continuing resolution would be a break from regular order, except that's become regular. And two, the other fallback is, we have to do 12. Well, we got 8. That's pretty good. And now we'll do, why don't we do the last 4 all together, except not acknowledge that is an omnibus bill and has hundreds of millions of pages and it's exactly the sorts of things that we promised we would never do. And oh my God, this work is actually hard and I do have to do it like everybody else.
Yeah, but don't forget 8 is the new 12.
Okay, right. I don't know how many they'll actually get through. Maybe they'll pass all 12 in the House because they know that they're all garbage and they'll all get thrown out anyway and the Senate will never agree to them. But we'll do 12. And
we did 12 and see we're geniuses. Right. So we'll see what happens. But, again, that's the hard work. That's what the House is really supposed to be doing.
Yes.
the rest is detail, as the old story goes.
Yes, they give that to the backbenchers who are supposed to be working while Jim Jordan is screaming.
Yeah. So while Chris Licht had this view of the world, which was obviously wrong, Greg Sargent writes about Joe Biden and says Joe Biden has a theory of MAGA that just might be working.
Oh, boy. All right. Let's hear it.
Now that Congress has passed the debt limit deal, explanations for Biden's success in negotiating are abounding. Among them, Biden drew on his long experience. He avoided claiming a win. He didn't get distracted by the media's second guessing. If you don't read Twitter, if you're not on Twitter, you don't pay attention to Twitter, Twitter's not going to bother you. That part's true.
Okay.
And he was pretty quiet about it, and sometimes less is more. So if you're going to negotiate with somebody, not lambasting them in public while you negotiate with them is a negotiating tactic.
Yes.
But here's another way to understand this unexpected outcome, Greg Sargent writes. Biden's operating from a largely unappreciated theory of MAGA, and in some ways it's working. Passage of the deal, which averts default and economic calamity, was decisively bipartisan. 17 Republicans backing it in the Senate, and after it passed the House with support from more than two-thirds of House Republicans. And this happened even though the deal's spending cuts are not close to what Republicans sought. Yeah, the outcome legitimizes the debt limit as a tool of extortion and imposes cruel new work requirements on many food stamp recipients. But Republicans didn't use this showdown to crash or cripple the economy, as some observers, including, to be honest, me, he says, worried that they might.
Well, they kept saying they were going to, so fair enough for you to assume that.
Biden's theory of MAGA helps explain the outcome. Biden ran in 2020 on the idea that the country faced an existential threat from the far right, highlighting white supremacy, political violence, and President Donald Trump's unprecedented attacks on democracy. But in promising to restore the soul of the nation in the face of this threat, Biden's continually distinguished between MAGA Republicans and more conventional ones. You may recall throughout his campaign and more recently, when Biden wanted to say Republicans are bad, he always says MAGA Republicans. And he never says all Republicans are bad. They may be, but he avoids that in public.
Okay.
And in doing so, he allows himself some space to negotiate with the ones he didn't name. Sure, they all claim if you say, where goes one, where all of us go, whatever that.
The QAnon thing, yeah.
That's the way Republicans approach this. If you yell at Marjorie Taylor Greene and say she's a radical, you're saying that about all of us.
Well, I am.
Yes. But he doesn't deliberately do that. He deliberately doesn't do that.
Right. And they always say, we always phrase this saying the quiet part out loud. I just said it just as quiet as I was supposed to.
But Biden's reading served him well in the debt limit standoff. Contrary to much criticism, Biden world believes that refusing to negotiate was key. It forced Republicans to offer their own budget, and then they could savage the spending cuts, which is basically what he did at his State of the Union, as I reminded people last week. Oh, you're complaining when I say that you want to cut Medicare and Social Security? Promise me right here on the spot, live TV, you don't want to cut Medicare and Social Security. You made that promise? Good. I'll take you up on it. Let's move on.
And it stood, too. I thought they would throw that out the window pretty quickly. They really didn't.
Yes. And that was his theory. There's enough moderates who don't want to do this publicly, who nonetheless, when push comes to shove, and shoving us off the economic cliff was shoving, they'll do it. They'll stick with us. And he was right.
All right.
So he thinks that not all Republicans are the same, to get down to it.
Okay.
As political scientist, Jonathan, we talk about this on the show all the time. There are persuadables. They're not the majority of the party. It doesn't matter. You just need a few.
Yes. And he hasn't shied away from attacking the right ones.
Right. As political scientist, Jonathan, and you don't have to. You don't have to make nice with MAGA people.
Okay.
Whether or not you poke them in the eye is up to you. It depends upon what you're trying to do. But that's not the point. When you're persuading, you're not trying to persuade MAGA people. You're trying to persuade the others.
Yes.
The outcome falsified the prediction that the GOP as a party would use the leverage to inflict maximum chaos. And the cuts themselves won't be nearly as damaging to the economy as, let's say, 2011, as Paul Krugman explains. And in fact, the New York Times had a whole story here about Biden's win is in the fine print.
Okay.
And it was part of the theme of the pundit roundup that I had. I can't even remember whether it was today or Saturday.
Oh.
that there's a difference between governance,
yes,
and politics.
That is true. We know that.
Governance is the fine print. You have one party that's only interested in posturing, and you have the other one who's interested in government. So you can be a little bit quieter about it, but write the good stuff into the fine print.
Yeah.
And this time it's not ALEC, it's the Democratic Party.
That's good.
And basically that's what happened with this deal. So Kate Bedingfield, the senior advisor to the 2020 Biden campaign, said, look, he's never hesitated to call out the extreme MAGA wing, but he feels that he needs to give Republican voters and legislators who reject that wing of the party a place that they can go. That's his theory of how you deal with MAGA. And so it allows an off-ramp for persuasion, as small as it may be. The off-ramps are never as big as the highway, but it's there. They can take it if they want it. And they took it.
I guess they did.
Of course, I think it's brilliant because I'm totally objective and he agrees with me.
Right. There you go. Easy. Now, where are the millions?
And now you understand that I could run CNN too because I have the same point of view.
It could easily be done that way, and maybe they ought to give it a try, quite honestly.
So in the debt limit outcome, the tension in Biden's approach, his initial rationale for running was the GOP's largely hostage to extremists. His re-election case is that he's begun to diffuse that threat, but he also believes that conducting the nation's business on a bipartisan basis is inherently stabilizing. In other words, there's something to regular order that speaks to good, not terrible.
Yes.
Not everything about Congress is bad. Not everything about institutions and tradition and precedent is bad. And that sometimes requires treating the opposition, or a large swath of it, as a mostly conventional political party, even if you have to pretend. He does it, he did it, it worked, and sometimes that's the way you have to do it.
Yeah. And I know that was part of the knock on him was, he doesn't recognize how terrible, at least the most terrible among them are, but it seems that really he does. And
that's what David Rothkopf wrote. He understands it, he gets it, he did it, it worked.
And he never did say that he would be able to negotiate with
He's pretty good at his job. Maybe those young, callow people who aren't his age need to learn from him.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Thanks, Greg, for filling the hour and doing so in such convincing fashion. Very nice. And I think it was an important thing and ties a lot of things together. Certainly the Chris Licht thing was very interesting. And I do want to spend some time kind of reading and absorbing all of that, all the fine print of it. And then good points about the Biden thing. I know it was both fashionable and to some extent correct and certainly justifiable to worry that, like, for instance, early on in the stages of the campaign in 2020, that when MAGA-ism and Trump-ism was not only at its, I guess you could say at its peak, but threatened to prevail in the election or whatever, however you want to put it, either actually win the election or just, I don't know what, steal the election, fix the process of the election such that they ended up being declared the winner, et cetera, however you want to phrase it. But when that was still in the offing, the idea of working with Republicans, it was a lot harder to see, to give yourself the distance to recognize that there were different kinds of Republicans when there was the threat of, an election clarifies those things. Sometimes it muddies them, but it puts it in more simplistic terms, right? Either the Republican nominee wins or the Democratic nominee wins. I mean, that's kind of the reality of where we stand, unless things change dramatically or some other sort of weird phenomenon is happening where there's actually a third party contestant who's running who stands a chance either to actually win or just be a spoiler, et cetera, et cetera. But, if the choices were between more Trumpism and Biden, Like, we preferred Biden, obviously, but it disturbed us greatly to have him saying, well, my great strength is I'll be able to, negotiate with the other side and find areas of agreement because I've been in Congress a long time. It's very easy to simply say to that. And I did, I didn't find myself as a Biden opponent or wringing my hands all the time about Biden. But, I still certainly felt it when people said he really seems to be operating in a different era, like mentally. He's comes from a different age. The long experience in Congress, while that's helpful in terms of knowing about the levers of power and, having people that you used to be able to negotiate with, but it's not necessarily going to carry over into the Trumpist era. You know what I mean? And then that criticism continued as he kept saying, there's a place to find a path through this debt ceiling crisis and get to a negotiation that's not about the debt ceiling, but about the budget itself. And although that seemed a little more manageable and understandable and true, it still fell subject to the same criticism. You're dealing with an, antiquated idea of Republicans. But it's an excellent reminder of something that Greg brings up all the time. There's absolutely no question about how horrible MAGA Republicans really are for, both ideologically and for the country. But once again, they are a distinct minority even within the ranks of people who still identify as Republican. Although, ironically, driving people who have disassociated themselves from the Republican Party but remain conservatives actually has, I guess, the effect of increasing the voice of the MAGA Republicans in the Republican Party until Trump leads them marching out the other exit, if he, say, doesn't win the nomination or something like that. But anyway, yeah. The point is that they really are a distinct minority, even within the Republican Party, and more so among the populace at large. They're just loud and obnoxious and have got the tools of the social media universe at their disposal. Okay, I am notified by Scott here that I guess the Netroots stream is playing. Well, first played some promos for, I guess, Justice Putnam's West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, which does follow us on the air, so it's not unusual. But that there's a Chris Hayes clip playing on now, so I guess I'll have to have Justice check that because he won't be hearing this. So excuse me for a minute while I do some typing, but there, I'll have to let Justice know. Okay. There we go. And so message dispatched, and we'll see. Oh, no, it was dispatched to Greg instead of to Justice. So that's not going to help us at all. And, all right. Well, now we'll have everything back in order. At least everybody's gotten the right notifications at this point. Okay. So we'll soldier on. Perhaps the stream will rejoin us at some point very soon. But if not, we'll always be recording for podcasts. So we always got that available. Let's see. Pocket. Right. That's where we go for the stories that I wanted to share with you today. Let's see. And there are a couple. And, you know what I wanted to do? There was something from the Business Insider report on the tape of Trump talking about that classified document on Iran that I wanted to add to the mix. I looked at it on Friday, and I ended up reading, I think, from, the New York Times or Washington Post and a few other sources, but I mentioned that I had the Business Insider one, and I skipped that one, figuring it doesn't really have much to add. But it really... it doesn't have much to add factually, but it has some other observations that I think help round out our understanding of just how serious this is. All right, Scott gives me the thumbs up that we're back, so that's good news. And I'll tell the rest of you rejoining the stream at this point. Well, I guess I should say, oh, you missed the most amazing stuff. You should go download the podcast. Don't feel bad if you don't actually do it, because all right, there was discussion. It was interesting, but we're moving on. So now, Business Insider's coverage of that Trump recording that we discussed last week. Reports of bombshell Trump recording suggests prosecutors may have grounds to charge him under the Espionage Act. That's what was really so interesting about the way Business Insider, if you're going by the URL, was approaching the story. To make the explicit mention in the headline, grounds to charge him under the Espionage Act. And, it makes sense. You've stolen classified documents, by the way, which are the Joint Chiefs of Staff's plan of attack, should they be ordered by the President of the United States for whatever reason to attack Iran. This is how we'll do it. This would be the sort of thing that you really wouldn't want people to steal copies of and wave around and show to people for any reason, whether it's bragging to your friends like Jack Tejera or Donald Trump, which is amazing that the two of them seem to have the same motivation. One guy who's, an IT maintenance guy at Air National Guard base in Cape Cod. The other guy, just, former president of the United States, but basically involved in the same activity of bragging to people that they know state secrets and are willing to share them with those people, not so that they'll act on it, but just to prove that they're really cool and knowledgeable and that everybody should look up to them. That's amazing. Like, Donald Trump must have the most amazing. It's funny that he has both the most outrageous ego and, I guess, continuing imposter syndrome. Like, he needs to prove to people that he has access to intelligence that most people don't have. And it's like, well, you were the former president of the United States. You were the president. You're now the former president of the United States. That's kind of a given. You really don't have to prove that to me. But, that seems to be, the driving force in your life. And that's weird. And you have issues and you should probably be in therapy, not the presidency. But anyway, you could do both, I suppose. I mean, I'd rather not have you in the presidency. But anyway, it's not to say that you can't be in therapy and serve as president of the United States. But in his case, I would prefer that not be true. All right. So anyway, let me read you the rest of this. The way they put this in the Insider article is important. And so therefore, it's important to know who's saying it. Kelsey Vlamis is the writer for Insider here. I'll skip the bullet points at the top because that tends to ruin things as I read their narrative, which is sometimes more interesting. Following a new CNN report about an audio recording that suggests former President Donald Trump knowingly took a classified document, remember what we're talking about? Legal experts are saying it could be the damning evidence. Damn it! Damning evidence. That's probably dramatic music. It's the damning evidence music. It could be the damning evidence needed to charge him under the Espionage Act. It could be the damning evidence. I mean that. The goddamn damning evidence that we've been waiting for to charge him under anything, for God's sake. Hurry up already. Come on. And, the Espionage Act is as straightforward a charge on this as there could be. The guy's been stealing classified documents and showing/selling them to people, and he knows they're classified, and that's the import of the tape. But there's a million levels on which this tape is super important. CNN reported last Wednesday, that several sources told the outlet about a recording obtained by federal prosecutors in which Trump acknowledged he had taken classified documents that detailed a potential attack on Iran. Like the worst possible thing. The recording included Trump saying he was not sure he was able to declassify records after leaving the presidency, two sources said. And by the way, the answer is no, you're not able to declassify records after leaving the presidency. You've left the presidency. Anyway, I mean, thank you for the opportunity to clear that up for you, Mr. Trump. Jeez. The New York Times and CBS News have also confirmed the existence of the recording. CNN said it had not listened to the recording, but was told about it by sources who called it an, quote, important, unquote, that's just only quote there is important piece of evidence. It's weird. I mean, you'd think they probably used that phrase. What did they say? Oh, it's very important. Okay. Important what? Piece of evidence. They'll add that. The sources said Jack Smith, the special counsel leading the Justice Department's investigation into Trump, had focused on the summer 2021 meeting in which the audio recording was taken. Trump, whose Pervalago resort and residence and sex dungeon were searched by the FBI in August, has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing and insisted that all the documents recovered were, quote, automatically declassified. Wrong, and wrong. According to court documents, the raid turned up many records that retained classified markings, including some that were labeled top secret. CNN reported the recording undercuts Trump's claims that he believed the documents were declassified. Yes and no. The fine point nuance there that's not reflected here, but thankfully we read the other coverage, and so therefore that's the point of reading like 15 different stories on these things, or anything for that matter, is yeah, you get these fine points here. Like right here it says, well, according to documents, the raid turned up many records that retained classified markings. Yes, but remember that if you stamp classified on a paper and then you declassify it, I mean, if the process goes right, you would think that there would be, can you also stamp this thing declassified and with a date on it or something like that? But if they don't get to it, or maybe that's not the process, then it's possible for a document to be declassified but still bear classification markings. But then remember that the prosecutors understood that already to be the case, and so they therefore when they issued the subpoena, they asked for all documents that bore classification markings, not for all classified documents, because that would have just led to confusion, either intentional confusion or accidental confusion. But it could easily be that, say, the Trump people would say, oh, but you asked for classified documents. So the president, the former president, who they still refer to as president because they work for him and they're sucking up to him because he has a giant ego and he'll never acknowledge being a former anything. They said, well, we did give you the classified documents. Remember, the former president over here said these were declassified. How come we think they're declassified? They don't say they're declassified. We have no record of their being declassified, but he says he mentally declassified them while he was a mentally defective president. We believe that because we're mentally defective too. And so therefore, we did not turn them over to you. You asked for classified. We believed in good/bad faith that these were actually declassified, and you asked for classified documents, therefore we didn't give them to you. And that's why the smart prosecutor said, well, give us anything that says it was once classified that you have, and then we'll figure out whether you're in trouble or not. All right. Well, in that case, we can't get around it unless we lie, cheat, and steal. And so for whatever reason, they gave them a bunch of those documents, and now they're in trouble for those things, except they also said, let's also lie, cheat, and steal and hide some of the documents, or discuss on tape hiding those documents so that other people can't find them, and I'll still be able to keep them. Well, that's bad on a number of levels, and that's what's so incriminating about this tape, is him not only discussing the document for having to do with the Iran plans, but also discussing, can't we basically move these documents around, and shouldn't we have a dress rehearsal for moving things before any search comes so that we can get around it? And no, you're not really supposed to be doing that, but they did do that. And that's why it would be appropriate to charge him under the Espionage Act, because he's doing the things that a spy would do. Stealing the documents, and then when it turns out that somebody might bust you and find the documents, if you're not in a position to abscond with the documents and defect to the Soviet Union, as, say, Tara Reid did, because you're in a special circumstance, you're not only a spy, but you're also a former president of the United States, and it would just play funny, let's say, for you to abscond and run away to the former Soviet Union. and defect. So instead, you just say, let's just hide things so that nobody ever finds out that I'm a spy. You would want to hide that fact. You wouldn't want to be taped talking about that, right? Anyway, but this is an important piece of the nuance, right? That was in the other points is that, yes, depending on how crazy you are, or how, much of a suck up you are to Trump, you could argue later on in an ancillary case in court that I did comply with this subpoena. I gave you everything that was classified. So that's why the prosecutors asked for everything that was once marked as classified. And that actually takes care of the situation. There was another bit of nuance here where they said, the raid turned up many records that retained classified markings, including some that were labeled top secret, but also remember that the document in question here, or the one that they're focusing on, the Iran document, was not top secret. It was some lesser level of classification, which is astonishing, really. Why wouldn't the Joint Chiefs of Staff's speculative plans for how to attack Iran, if that should become necessary, not be given the highest level of secrecy? They just weren't. But that we are also informed leads to an even greater possibility of prosecution, because that means the case falls in that sweet spot, the Goldilocks type of case where the documents stolen are not so sensitive and secret that we can't even reveal what they were. And so therefore we don't really have any evidence that we can produce for a jury without creating greater danger, but also not so low level that if we do produce them, the jury will say, what's the big deal? Well, who cares that he stole that? And so that's good news. But anyway, in case that doesn't get discussed in this article, I wanted to throw that back out there. The Department of Justice is investigating if Trump broke several laws, including the Espionage Act, which prohibits the sharing of information that could harm the U.S. or give an advantage to foreign countries. And the attack plans would probably fit that, right? The act is concerned with the gathering, transmitting, or losing that's what it says. But really, with gathering, transmitting, or losing defense information, including any national defense document that was, quote, illegally removed from its proper place of custody to be lost, stolen, abstracted, or destroyed. Okay. Which of those things may have happened? Possibly all of them. And we'll get to that, I guess, afterwards. I have some follow-up to this. In a statement provided to Insider, a spokesman for Trump accused the Justice Department of interfering in the 2024 election. That's, what their view of this. If you are actually going to prosecute this spy as a spy while the spy is running for president of the United States, well, that's interference in the election. Well, yeah, if you're talking about running as a normal candidate, but you're not a normal candidate. But that's one of the problems of CNN and Chris Licht. Like, no, he is a normal candidate. We should treat him as normal. Well, no. I mean, like if Aldrich Ames said, you can't prosecute me for espionage, I'm running for president. People would say, you're not running for president. That's a joke. You're just doing that to get out. I mean, you'd think that you'll get out of prosecution if you run for president and claim interference, but everyone can see through that. It's such a transparent scheme that that's never going to work. But apparently it's going to work for Donald Trump because he was once president, even though he ran for president the first time to get out of prosecution. Anyway, I don't know. We're just never going to get over that. Some people just, slip through. We just disregard stuff. It happens all the time. I mean, it's not good, but it does happen a lot. In a statement provided to Insider, right? So Trump spokesperson accuses DOJ of interfering in the election and said, leaks from radical partisans behind this political prosecution are designed to inflame tensions and continue the media's harassment of President Trump and his supporters because he's a spy and he belongs in prison. This is absolutely blockbuster evidence, said, here he is again, Renato Mariotti, still around, a former federal prosecutor, and he said so on Twitter of this reported audio. It proves that Trump knew he kept highly classified documents after he left office. True. That he shared the classified info with people who didn't have clearance and, quote, suggests he was aware of limitations, unquote, on his ability to declassify. Yes, it does do all of those things, I think. Does it prove that Trump knew he kept classified for a normal person? Yes. Could he still come and claim, yeah, I didn't know? Yeah, we'll say it tends to prove that he's probably lying about that. Peter Strzok, the former FBI agent, also said the audio as described would be, quote, huge, as Trump would say, in justifying an espionage charge by filling in essential gaps, including that the alleged audio could potentially show that Trump knew about declassifying procedures, knew he hadn't done it, and potentially told an unauthorized person about the document. I mean, he kind of did. Make no mistake, okay, I won't, this is squarely an Espionage Act case. It is not simply an obstruction case. Ryan Goodman, a law professor at NYU with expertise in national security, wrote on Twitter, adding, there is now every reason to expect former President Trump will be charged under the Espionage Act. It should be hard to run for president as a person charged with espionage, don't you think? The law fits his reported conduct like a hand in glove, Goodman said. It does. It really does seem to have been the case. Richard W. Painter, who served as the chief White House ethics lawyer under President George W. Bush, also said it was a, quote, clear violation of the Espionage Act, adding, the DOJ has no choice but to indict Trump. Wow. That's pretty amazing. Especially from the George W. Bush White House where, you know, people should have been charged under the Espionage Act for, I don't know, say outing CIA agents. But that's one of those areas where, ironically, the classification level was too high and the information too sensitive to actually present to a jury. And so it therefore pays, if you're going to be a spy, reveal super duper sensitive stuff so that they can't use it as evidence against you. Although if you reveal it, I guess that information could be used as evidence against you. But whether or not you can produce the documents, redacted or otherwise, to show the jury, well, okay. That's a technicality. Now, as I said, I had further information about this, and we ought to get to it quick so that we can get on to other subjects for the last quarter of the show, the final quarter, like a football game. Let's see. Let me jump over to here. Mark Sumner over at Daily Kos has this to add, right? If you were wondering, what do you mean when you say that this fits like a hand in glove, or when you say, which one of these things did he do, right? There's the, where were we in this? I think it was a little higher up in the, here we are, that it is, the act, the Espionage Act is concerned, as Business Insider put it, with gathering, transmitting, or losing defense information, including any national defense document that was illegally removed from its proper place of custody. This one was, and allowing it to be lost, stolen, abstracted, or destroyed. Okay. Have any of those things happen? Has it been lost? Has it been stolen? I mean, it has been stolen. Abstracted? We don't know. Destroyed? We don't know. What about lost? We don't know, but we do know this, or Mark says he knows this. The Iran document that Trump talked about on tape is missing, and that too calls for dramatic music. I really think we need some sort of other, I don't know, we keep using this a lot, and I don't know, but what else do you use for this? All right, what's happening? You may have wondered, you know, it sounded like Trump was waving around a piece of paper in the audio. Was he doing that? Don't know for sure. Was that paper the document he was actually saying it was? Don't know for sure. One of the things you're going to want to do at that point is say, okay, he says he's got this document. Where is it? We don't have it. Do you have it? And remember, they've subpoenaed documents. They got a bunch of boxes. They raided Mar-a-Lago. They got a bunch of boxes. They say they allowed Trump's lawyers to search his other properties. No other boxes turned up. But now this Iran document, now that we know on tape that he's talking about a specific document, what is it? Where is that document now? And I guess the answer is we don't know. Mark says earlier in the week, Hunter reported on the discovery that there was an audio recording of Donald Trump in the 2021 meeting in which he talked about holding on to a national security document containing details of a potential military attack on Iran. That recording made it clear that Trump knew he had retained information classified at the highest level. No, not the highest level, but it's high enough. And that he had not declassified this material before leaving the White House. This recording which was reportedly played for the grand jury hearing evidence on the case being investigated by special counsel Jack Smith, seems more than adequate to justify an indictment. However, it turns out to be just the tip of the iceberg. CNN is reporting that this document was not among those recovered by the FBI when they searched the storage room and Trump's office at Mar-a-Lago. In fact, Trump's attorneys can't find the document anywhere. Oh my God, wouldn't that be something if it turned... Remember the crazy / fun partial truth, but maybe also conspiracy theory that it was buried in Ivana's casket? I know. But, I mean, this would just be the ultimate capper to all of this if that actually turned out to be true. But I don't... Nothing about this makes me think that it is, but... That's the case. We'll leave it at that for the moment and come back and read the rest of the Sumner thing because we don't believe in gotta leave it there until it becomes 11 o'clock. At that point, our beliefs about leaving things there change. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Into the final stretch. We'll begin by continuing with Mark Sumner's piece from end of last week that adds a new element to the Trump story. New to those who, turned their brains off on Thursday, I guess, and haven't come back since. And, a lot of us operate that way. So, yes, apparently... the next step of what do you do with this information of this recording with Trump waving around a document and claiming to have a as yet still classified for some strange reason document on the proposed plans of attack on Iran should that for some reason become necessary, i.e. Donald Trump wins election and decides to hell with everything. I'll launch us into a disastrous war, and this would be the plan for it. Okay, so he claims he has this thing. Although, remember, also part of the context is he's waving it around saying, see, I'm not the crazy warmonger. General Milley is the crazy warmonger because, look, he's prepared plans for attacking Iran, and I would never attack Iran. He's the one who wants to attack Iran, but in fact, that's normal procedure for the military, for one thing. And for another, why did you ask for such a document at all? And why are you keeping it? Is question number 3. Anyway, lots going on here. But the next follow-up question, not if you're Chuck Todd, but for anybody else, the next follow-up question would be, okay, so this is a still classified document. You haven't revealed the contents as far as we know, but we'll follow up elsewhere and see if that, is actually true or not. But in the meantime, in order to sort of contain the damage, where is this document now? Because we searched your house and your sex dungeon and we couldn't find it among this group of documents we got no matter how we asked or searched ourselves or whatever. And then we had heard from your attorneys, yeah, we looked in Bedminster. It's not here. Okay, well, or no documents are here. All right, so, well, anyway, where is the document? And, the simplest answer would be it's in Bedminster, where his attorneys said they found no documents. So another thing, right? At this point, we're going to have to start arresting the attorneys, I think, because if it just becomes an Espionage Act case, then you're helping this spy hide stolen classified documents is just something you're going to have to answer for in court. Now, it's troublesome and you don't want to be, normally arresting people's attorneys for these things. But at the very least, they're going to have to start answering questions to a grand jury to see whether or not they really deserve to be arrested afterwards. But you're going to have to answer for what happened. You knew that there was a very serious espionage adjacent at this point case against the former president of the United States, that we had to go to the point where we, conduct an FBI search at Perva-Lago in order to come up with with classified material that he kept trying to hide from us that he had. So we asked you, you want to avoid this happening at every Trump property, search them. Or you offered this and we took it, and said, all right, well, we don't have any particular reason to believe that he has classified documents hidden at all of his properties. So you go ahead and search. We don't want to have the optics. I don't know why. I do. But they didn't want to have the optics of searching every one of Trump's properties for these materials. And then you said you searched, presumably under penalty of perjury, and said you had nothing. And maybe it was true, maybe it wasn't, but now there's tape. And remember that this tape was made at Bedminster. And he says he has his document and he's waving around he does something on audio which sounds like he's waving around a piece of paper. We still don't know exactly what he was doing. Maybe grand jury testimony from those present at the meeting could tell us. And even if they didn't see the document, was he waving a document? Is that what that sound was? Can we at least find that out? And then, the real issue is, well, so what happens to the document? Did it exist? Was it in his hands? Is that what he's waving? Maybe we can't establish that, but that's the drive here. We want to find out what's going on. He's describing a document that at least we know exists. It comports with descriptions of other documents that have been produced, turned over to the White House, properly classified. They exist, but the copies that we sent to the White House are missing. That's the issue. The missing document, Mark continues, reportedly contains handwritten pages from General Mark Milley describing one approach to a possible attack on Iran. Handwritten. That's amazing. Earlier reports indicated that Trump also had documents related to Iran's nuclear program and defenses, but it's not clear if this is all part of the same document, the same missing document. Okay, so that's a nuance. It could be set. I'm sure there's thousands of different documents about Iran. No real reason to believe that they are the same document. But anyway, Smith's team, well, the important part is there was such a document, and now no one knows where it is. That's not good. Smith's team has reportedly notified Trump's attorneys that they want the document. Yeah. They want any notes related to the document. They want any other material referencing the document. They want any copies made of the document. But mostly, they need the original document that Trump talked about on the recording. Since that 2021 meeting took place at Trump's golf course in Bedminster, New Jersey, that would seem to be one logical place to look for the document. That's right. So far, the FBI has not conducted any search at this location or at hundreds of other properties owned by Trump. That seems like a major oversight. And for those of you who are fans of the conspiracy theory, because it's serious in your mind or because it's comedic in your mind, Bedminster, New Jersey is where Ivana was buried. And I'm as dumb as that would be to bury, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But Donald Trump is an idiot. He was going to nuke hurricanes and buy Greenland. Could he have buried a document in order to hide it? Sure. I mean, it's dumb because it makes it awfully difficult to recover the document, and it seems like the major interest that he had in the documents was being able to wave them around or show them to people. But, he's done dumber things, and I don't know what to tell you. I mean, there you have it. Anyway, shortly before the FBI searched Perva-Lago, members of Trump's staff, along with workers at that location, moved some boxes out of the storage facility. It's not known if those boxes were recovered by the FBI or if they were moved to other locations. I mean, the FBI might know, but we don't. Anyway, they may also not know. There are reports that Trump has admitted showing classified information to visitors at Mar-a-Lago. Visitors to that location include representatives of Saudi Arabia, Iran's biggest adversary in the Middle East, although they're getting together these days. You should point that out. Saudi Arabia also funded a LIV golf event held at the Bedminster course. They also just recently finished sponsoring an event here at the Virginia course over was it this past weekend? No, I don't think so. It was the previous weekend. Anyway, in recent weeks, the special counsel's office has complained to a federal judge that they couldn't be sure Trump had returned all the classified information. Now, they're sure he didn't, which really should mean something. Like, honestly, at this point, if it was anybody else, you'd be saying, this person really needs to be in custody. This is a spy who continues to spy and continues to elude arrest for some reason. It's not because we don't know where he is. We do. It's because he was once, for some strange reason, considered to be president of the United States and therefore something. And, and it's at that weird nexus of constitutional law and immovable objects and irresistible forces where the same activity for anybody else is punishable by death, essentially. And, but for a former president of the United States, it's like, well, there's nuance. He may be right. He may be wrong. We can't really charge him with anything because we don't charge former presidents. And maybe he could make the whole thing go away he could make us stop investigating him by running for president again. Or if he were to win election, could pardon himself and everybody else connected with it. And it's just, hey, that's the way it goes. He stole the plans written up by the Joint Chiefs of Staff for attacking Iran and sold them to somebody. And he's president now. And that's all there is to it. That's the end of the story. As opposed to, most other people, well, we arrested them and we executed them. That's sort of the way it goes. Sorry. The way to get out of that, if you don't like it, is run for president of the United States. Which seems like a bad incentive package, honestly. And perhaps we ought to look at that. But, how do you address that? I don't know. Yeah, the process by which you could change that seems extraordinarily complicated and difficult to navigate. Okay. What other things do I have to share with you? There are several. This one I need to work out for myself still and figure out exactly what's going on. How about this one? There are, a couple of things that we started on and didn't finish, and a couple of things that we might, perhaps want to start now at this stage. I think, the things that we started, we'd have to kind of go back and, comb through again and identify a place to restart. But there was more I wanted to share with you about. There was plenty more left, and maybe if you didn't read the rest of the article from the Washington Monthly about Josh Hawley and his trying to set himself up with a platform of there's something wrong with the way America now treats manhood. And that instead of trying to fix it, he was actually interested in exploiting it instead. Let's see. I think a related article, without doubling back and reading the rest of the Washington Monthly thing, because it's a pretty lengthy thing, we'll launch into this lengthy thing instead and save for another day some of the other interesting analyses that would otherwise eat up the rest of today's show. From ProPublica, always a good idea to read from ProPublica. Something that I'll hold out as a document related to the Josh Hawley story, of which I tried to remind you. This essentially, well, first of all, it might require our Ruga horn at some point, although I could use Greg's version of it as well. He became convinced. Who is it? It doesn't matter, but you'll find out who. It's a ordinary, normal person of sorts. He became convinced the school board in his area was pushing transgender BS, or, as we might put it, or Greg might put it.
Bullshit.
Right, exactly. Transgender. Which kind of bull BS? Transgender kind. He became convinced the school board was pushing transgender BS. He ended up arrested and emboldened. So, sometimes the arrest doesn't have the intended effect. And it wasn't even here in Loudoun County, but of course that was the celebrated case here. Well, you're pushing transgender BS, and you scream and rant at a school board meeting. Things get out of control. Confrontations are had. People are threatened. Cops remove you. You don't want to be removed. It ends up being a wrestling match. And in the end, the right wing ends up waving this around and saying, look, it's just parents wanting to be heard. Well, it's parents wanting to be heard and threatening to thrash the life out of other people at the meeting. And, that's generally a bad thing. Anyway, this happens somewhere else completely because it's happening all over the place because, well, I don't know, but partially because in many ways, of the same manhood complaints that Josh Hawley is trying to exploit from the other article. Let's read about this one. Nicole Carr writing this one for ProPublica, and I imagine this will take us to the end of the show, but let's go. First up here is the graphic showing the arrest about which we are speaking. Eric Jensen, a parent in North Carolina, had grievances to air about library books, quote, trying to convert kids to gay, unquote, and about mask and vaccine mandates. Just catch all, throw it all against the wall, see what sticks. So he joined an activist group and headed to a school board meeting. And guess what? I guess it all goes wrong. An image of a shooting target with 2 bullet holes to the head and 5 scattered around the chest serves as a warning to visitors who climb the brick steps and pass the American flag. How could you pass the American flag? You should stop and salute. And then that freezes all patriotic attackers in their tracks. But anyway, you pass the flag to reach Eric Jensen's front door. And then you also see this, I don't know what, an image of a shooting target. Is it supposed to be a picture of his own shooting? You can get yourself shot if you come here with woke nonsense. If you can read this, you're in range, the sign says. Another warning posted near the doorbell states, no solicitation. This property charges $50 per minute to listen to any vaccine/medical advice. Ay. Now, he ordered that one back in 2021. After mobile units offering COVID-19 vaccines began riding through his community outside Winston-Salem, North Carolina. So back when we were saying, well, what if people are having difficulty because they live in an underserved community and they're having difficulty or they're immune compromised, they don't want to go out and get the vaccine? We'll come to you with the vaccine. And that ends up becoming conspiracy theory fodder. And now people are posting pictures or signs that imply that they will shoot people that come and ask, hey, do you want the vaccine? Not force you to have the vaccine, but hey, do you want the vaccine? And by the way, give me $50 just for asking that. No, there's no, anything out there that says you can post signs that say what your rates are. That's just nonsense. For years, Jensen had been looking for a way to voice his many grievances because he's not manly enough or because his manhood is under attack or something, related not just to masks and vaccines, but to, quote, transgender, well, it's not a quote to say transgender BS, but that's how we'll handle it here, and library books trying to convert kids to gay and other perceived dangers he says his 5 younger children face in the public school system. The 65-year-old retiree has 4 other children who are adults. Then, so basically it was all fine. They all graduated without being turned gay by the library. But now I have another one, and so therefore I have 5 kids. And yeah, no, you don't. Anyway, I mean, yes, you would say, how many kids? You go, oh, we have 5. Now they're grown and adults. But when you show up at the school board and scream about having 5 kids, something, blah, blah, blah. Well, they're all done except for one. Anyway, then he found a place where he could finally be heard. You gotta start from the bottom and work yourself up, Jensen said not long after he reluctantly opened his front door last November. I mean, you can't just go to your governors and try to make a difference, so you start at the bottom, and the bottom is the school boards. I don't know if they would all agree about that, but you see what he means. He had intended to wage a campaign against the school board to bring about change. Instead, his efforts got him arrested. Now, Donald Trump intended to wage a campaign against I don't know who in order to bring about change. But we can't arrest him because reasons. And those reasons are stupid, and we should arrest him. At first, Jensen, not Trump, was hesitant to talk about what happened in the lead up to the February 2022 incident. In the weeks after the arrest, he didn't comment in any of the news stories that covered it. Then, as the months wore on and his charges were dropped, he realized that standing up to authorities wasn't going to lead to any sort of punishment. I thought, holy crap, he didn't use the word crap, I didn't have to go through a whole lot of aggravation there. He said that, walking away from the ordeal, he felt emboldened. Which, I mean, any behaviorist will tell you, yeah, if you don't punish people for their bad actions, they'll probably do them again. ProPublica identified 59 people arrested or charged over an 18-month period as a result of turmoil at school board meetings across the country. In the coming weeks, ProPublica will continue to publish stories about how that unrest has played out in various communities and upended once stayed school board meetings. In the dozens of incidents ProPublica examined, some of which involved threats and violence, only one person who disrupted a meeting was given a jail sentence. A college student protesting in support of transgender rights. Oh, well. By contrast, almost all of the other individuals, including Jensen, railed against the adoption of mask mandates, the teaching of divisive concepts concerning racial inequality, and the availability of books with LGBTQ plus themes in school libraries. Also, like Jensen, the vast majority of people arrested or charged faced few consequences. Jensen didn't come up with the idea to target the school board on his own. He'd volunteered to help 2 women connected to the state chapter of a national group that was rapidly gaining followers through social media sites and YouTube channels promoting the convoluted QAnon conspiracy theory. Jensen, a solid, gray-haired man with piercing blue eyes, who's a dapper Nazi, retired about 5 years ago, though his wife still works as a custodian at the elementary school. He'd been a project manager for a metal building manufacturer that transferred him to North Carolina from Ohio. Prior to that, he and his family owned a campground for 3 decades. He described how, several years ago, he made the decision to abandon mainstream media. He said it used to be that I was always watching the news, but once I found out how much they lie, you have to get back into alternative media to find out the actual truth. He said he has since become convinced that John F. Kennedy Jr. is alive, Hillary Clinton and Bill Gates are dead, and the COVID-19 vaccine is actually a death shot. Echoing a debunked claim, he explained, all of those are debunked claims, by the way, but echoing a different one, I guess, he explained his belief that the vaccine changes your DNA in a way that allows those who patented the modified genetic sequence to, quote, own you. Not pwn you, but to actually own you like sovereign citizen style. Now they own your number and something, I mean, whatever their stupid, crazy theory is among the sovereign citizens, which is part of an effort to kill people off and depopulate the planet. It's working great, by the way, right? I've seen it many times where they've got plastic caskets lined up. I've never seen any anywhere. He said, there must be 1 million of them sitting there in lots waiting for these people to die. I'm just telling you, I mean, again, YouTube, this is not me doing it. And I had a good weekend with YouTube, by the way. I don't want to be angry at you anymore. You taught me how to fix the dryer, and I appreciate it. But, you don't block this because I'm reading a ProPublica story about how crazy some people are. I don't believe it. ProPublica doesn't believe it. This guy believes it. He'll have a YouTube channel. I'll be blocked. That'll be the upshot of all this. Just like, as we found out, the only people arrested for disrupting things at school board meetings are people protesting for transgender rights. Anyway, in January of 2022, shortly after he became interested in what he saw as threats posed by school boards, he logged on to the messaging service Telegram. Arrest everybody with Telegram. I started putting feelers out, trying to find, groups that were involved with it and see what they were doing, he said. And yes, arresting everybody who has Telegram would be fascism, and we don't like that. We're supposed to be against that. And it's true, and you shouldn't arrest everybody with Telegram. But you should be taking a look. A Telegram group called North Carolina Bonds for the Win. Bonds for the Win. Okay. Seemed like the right fit for crazy people, I guess. The National Bonds for the Win movement, I don't even know what that is, but maybe they'll explain it, had been gaining steam, promoting its mission to force school districts to drop so-called unconstitutional practices, including COVID-19 safety protocols and the distribution of alleged obscene materials to minors. Wasn't this... Yes, now I remember. We did read a little bit about this at some point. To accomplish its goal, its followers would serve local school boards with reams of paperwork outlining an intent to sue their district's surety bond or risk management plan providers. The movement, dubbed Paper Terrorism by the Southern Poverty Law Center and the Anti-Defamation League, aims to force school districts into compliance to avoid losing federal funding. Remember, they were going to sue the school board's insurers over the surety bonds or whatever scheme it was by which they were covered with liability insurance. And they were going to just make it so impossible, basically, to afford to continue to provide coverage that the school boards would be forced to change their policies in order to avoid all sorts of consequences, whether it was losing their insurance or federal funding or both, neither of which may actually have been a consequence of suing. And I think we also found out that most of the places that were being sued this way didn't actually have surety bond style coverage. It was just, a figment of the imagination of these sovereign citizen style lawsuits. The tactic was already being tested in North Carolina's largest school district, where earlier that January, a mother had crossed a security barrier to serve the Wake, County School Board with papers warning, "You've violated your oath of office." No, they hadn't. Another local report described how police turned off lights in an attempt to clear people out of an Iredell, Statesville school board meeting. The people yelled, "You've been served," to the school board members and told police they wouldn't leave unless they were arrested. Well, okay then. And that's when I found these ladies, Jensen said of the two women leading efforts in his school district for North Carolina Bonds for the Win, which is not a win at all. On February 22nd, 2022, Jensen arrived at the lobby of the Winston-Salem Forsyth County School Board meeting and met the women, Deborah Tuttle and Regina Garner, face-to-face for the first time. They handed him a cardboard box of paperwork. It's a campaign in a box, literally, which he understood to be, quote, explanations about how they, district officials, were going to get sued against their bonds, unquote, for teaching critical race theory, an academic framework sometimes taught at college level and above that examines U.S. history, college levels and above, that examines U.S. history through a lens of racism, and allowing books containing, quote, profanity in school. So, he's complaining about critical race theory. He's complaining about profanity in school books. And here's an explanation on how they're going to get sued. Okay, fine. A bunch of garbage. He said the documents also included proof that masks don't work, which, of course, they do, so there's never going to be proof that masks don't work. Tuttle and Garner did not respond to numerous requests for comment. Just minutes into the meeting, the school board chairperson watched with curiosity and a dose of trepidation as a man with a huge box took a seat a few rows back. He texted the board members sitting next to her, alerting them to the man. They, too, wanted to know what was in the box. Is it crazy documents? Is it a bomb? Is it I don't know what, a Tasmanian devil? We're a little bit worried. See something? Say something. Okay. He was just staring at us, and we were a little worried for our safety, Chairperson Deanna Kaplan recalled. Both Garner and Tuttle signed up to address the board during the public comment period. Garner complained about the district's failure to uphold the Constitution and accused school officials of practicing medicine without a license and violating child abuse laws. Then Tuttle stepped up. There's a lot more violations that she didn't get to, but you can read those for yourself when we serve you your letters of intent. She told the board, your letters of intent? Is that even all right. As the women spoke, Kaplan grew more uneasy about that man with the box. Then she said, he started charging at us. That doesn't sound good at all, does it? Well, now is the time when we change our mind about whether or not we leave things here because we are running out of time. But this gives you some idea of what's going on here. You want to hear a little bit more before we exit? As Jensen, clutching the box, neared the superintendent, school security officers grabbed him and pulled him out of the meeting room. In the adjacent hallway, he strained against the 3 men it took to hold him down. You work for me, Jensen repeatedly yelled as security guards tried to shackle his wrists and ankles. His deep voice echoed in the hallway into the meeting room, where some attendees began screaming and board members sat in disbelief as they watched the mounting chaos. As the board hastily called for an impromptu recess, one man yelled, "Commie cowards! Commie bitch!" yelled another. "If you walk out, you're walking away from your job," Tuttle yelled from the podium. There was somebody in the audience that was yelling, "The Patriots are coming!" I mean, it was like a zoo. It was crazy, Kaplan recalled. The board members were concerned for our safety. You see how this sets up? It's very interesting. And of course, Josh Hawley will tell you, well, you didn't take Jensen's manhood seriously, and something, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. And I read it on Discord or Telegram or, whatever. And by the way, JFK Jr. is alive and RFK Jr. for president. Oh, my God. You see, we're falling prey to the same crazy everywhere.
From networksradio.com, you have been
both
listening
sides
to Kagro in the morning with David Waldman.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. Chris Licht will tell you that those guys deserve their own town hall to have their issues aired out. Okay, time for us to stop for today, but time for Justice Putnam to pick up the ball and run with it right after this. Let's see, he begins, get ready for more about crazy-ass DeSantis, continuing to sneer that he will destroy leftism. Next.